the last night Sheikh Hamdan spent with his girlfriend before the wedding. Neither of them said it was the last night. That is the thing about last nights. They are almost never announced as what they are while they are happening. The person living through them does not usually have access to the specific knowledge that this particular night is the final one of a chapter. They feel something, a weight that is different from the ordinary weight of evenings spent together, a quality of attention in the way they hold the moment, more deliberate, more aware, more conscious of the specific texture of the hours than ordinary evenings usually produce. But they do not say, "This is the last night," because saying it would make it too real, would make the morning that follows it too specifically the beginning of everything the night is ending. So they do not say it. They hold the night instead, with the specific care of people who are not naming what they know. He had known for weeks that the wedding was coming, not as an abstract future event, but as a specific imminent reality, with a date attached to it that the palace had already placed on the official calendar, and that the management of his public life had already begun organizing the world around. June 6th, 2019. The date existed before this night. The date had been real before this night. But the night before a permanent change has its own specific quality of finality that all the preceding days of knowing the date is coming do not produce. The night before the wedding was the last night with her. And he spent it the way a man spends a last night with someone he loves when he cannot change the morning that is coming, completely present, because presence is the only gift that the circumstances of the night leave available to give. She had also known. She had known for longer than she would probably have chosen to know, had been in possession of the knowledge of the wedding's approach with the specific suffering that comes from knowing something is coming that you cannot stop, and watching it approach through the days with the specific helplessness of a person who is not inside the decision being made, but is entirely inside its consequences. She had known the date. She had been counting toward it in the way that people count toward things that are coming, whether they count or not. Not because the counting helps, but because the mind does what minds do with significant approaching events, regardless of whether the doing of it serves any useful purpose. She had counted, and the last night had arrived, and she was in it with him, in the private space that had always been theirs, that existed entirely outside the official story, that had no name in any public record, that was real only to the two of them and the small number of people close enough to know about it. They did not spend the night planning what came next or negotiating the terms of what the relationship was going to look like after the morning, or having any of the forward looking conversations that a different kind of night might have produced. Those conversations had already happened, not on that night, in the weeks before it, in the specific agonized discussions that people have when they are trying to understand how a relationship survives a change this significant, or whether it survives it, so, or what surviving it actually means in practical terms for both people. Those conversations were behind them by the time the last night arrived. What the last night was for was not planning. It was for being in what they had, while they still had it in the form it had always been. He was aware of everything. That quality, the heightened awareness of the specific details of a moment that a person is in the middle of losing, was present in him that night in a way that the people who knew him well and who have described this period of his story have consistently noted as characteristic of him in the days immediately preceding the wedding. He was paying attention in the specific way of a man who understands that the form of what he is paying attention to is about to change in a way he cannot reverse. The particular quality of her voice in that space, the specific way the hours felt, the ordinary details that become significant when they are being experienced in the context of their own ending. He held them in the way he holds everything that matters, not with the performance of holding, but with the actual interior attention of a person who is fully present in something because he understands is temporary. She held it too, not with bitterness. That is the specific quality of her that people who know this story have always come back to. The absence of bitterness in us, a situation that would have produced bitterness in most people. She was not bitter, she was present in the specific way of someone who has understood the terms of what she entered and who is now, at the last night of the first chapter of those terms, choosing to be fully in the thing rather than in the grief of its changing. There was grief there, underneath the presence. She was not pretending the grief was absent, but the grief was not what she chose to lead with. She chose to lead with the thing itself, the specific, private, real thing that they had built and that the morning was going to change, but that was still on this last night entirely intact. They did not talk about the wedding directly. That boundary, the not naming of the specific thing that the morning was bringing, held through the night, not because either of them was pretending it was not happening, because naming it would have made the night about the wedding rather than about what the night was actually about. And the night was about them, not the official story, not the arranged marriage that was going to begin in the morning, about the specific private reality of two people who had found each other before the official story had any claim on either of them, and who were spending this last night in the form they had always been in together. The morning came, it always does. The morning that the last night was the last night before arrived in the way that mornings arrive, without announcement, without the specific drama that the significance of the night might have suggested it would bring, just the ordinary arrival of light and the ordinary beginning of a day that happened to be one of the most significant days in the official life of the man who had spent the night before it in the private world that the official day was going to formally reorganize. He went to the wedding. He stood where the family required him to stand. He said what the ceremony required him to say. He performed with the specific grace that he has always brought to the performance of everything the official world has required of him, the role that the day had been designed to require. And somewhere in the city, in the private space that was still hers, even after the morning had changed what the morning changed, she began the next chapter of the terms she had understood and accepted. Neither of them named the last night while they were in it, but both of them have been living inside the knowledge of what it was ever since. Subscribe to this channel and hit the bell. Every week I bring you the real story of Sheikh Hamdan, the last nights, the mornings that followed, and the truth about what it costs to spend the night before the rest of your official life with the person who has always been the real one.